Hey guys, this is Tten Nelson from KSK Martial Arts. I'm joined here today with Sensei Nicklaus Suino from Japanese Martial Arts and Bob Wolfe. Bob, what's the name of your school, bud?
Itten Dojo.
Itten Dojo. And today we're going to be talking about the topic of training multiple martial arts and the pros and cons of them. Both Nick and Bob are experienced martial artists, veterans of the martial arts, if you will, both with modern and traditional arts. And their opinions are we talk every week, and I always enjoy our conversations. They've got great opinions on things, and I think this is going to be a lot of fun. So let's get into it. Nick, you want to get us going?
Yeah, man. Thanks for that intro. Great to be here with you guys. So what we're going to talk about today is the question, multiple martial arts. Should you train in multiple martial arts? What are the pros and cons? Uh, Sensei Wolf, you want to kick this off, and then we'll pile on your answers, however
Sure.
intelligent they may be.
My opinion is there are great advantages to training in multiple martial arts so long as the arts are complementary. And by complementary, I mean they need to be physically and somewhat spiritually congruent in what they're doing. The biggest problems that I see are trying to train in arts that are too similar but are different schools or traditions, such as two styles of swordsmanship or two styles of karate. And I'm speaking from uh, fruits of a misspent youth, having done both things, I can say that's not a great idea. But when you can combine two arts that give a wider range of physical structure across different ranges or different weapons or different approaches, but that those arts fit together very well, I think there's a lot of advantage.
What do you think,
I
Nick?
well, when I think about, I definitely see pros and cons to both. Primarily pros. Obviously, I do study multiple martial arts. It's always kind of been my thing, and I think it has to do. Each art is highly individualized, so I think it has to do with the individual. I also believe that it has to do with like what are we doing this for? If are you thinking about training multiple martial arts because you want to get into competition? Then you might need a striking art, you might need a wrestling art, you might need a grappling art. Are you doing multiple martial arts for your body, for your health? Then you might need an external art that helps get the cardio, that helps get the heart rate up, and pushes you like some form of kickboxing or Muay Thai. But you also might want to balance that with an art, say like some sort of like Tai Chi or something like that works more on the internal side and helps you find that balance. So it's not just all external, something that helps you monitor your heart rate and find your balance. And then, there's always just what do I enjoy doing? Like that's an important one for me. It's just, what do I enjoy doing? I had a conversation one time with my old kickboxing instructor, and he was really into kickboxing and basketball and video games. Those are like his three big activities that he did. And I would do kickboxing with him, but then I also was doing traditional karate, and I think I was dabbling with capoeira at the time. And he says, why are you wasting your time with this and that? Like, like what do you need these other things for when what I'm showing you is the thing you need, And I says, well, it's because I enjoy it. What's the difference if I split my time between capoeira, karate, and kickboxing? What's the difference between that and you splitting your time between basketball, video games, and kickboxing? Basketball and video games aren't going to help you in the street either. But they're things that you enjoy. They're things that like stimulate your mind, stimulate your body, and plus you've got a self-defense component between the three. Why can't I just study martial arts for the simple fact that I enjoy them? They stimulate my mind, they stimulate my body, and self-defense just kind of comes with that. I had no fantasies about using capoeira in the street necessarily, but there were things that my body enjoyed and got from it. So in the end, I think it has to do with it. You just have to make sure you're enjoying your journey. That's the most important part on my end.
I like that. It's I don't want to call it modern, but a very democratic way of viewing the martial arts, which I share, but I didn't always share, right? Because I came up in a very traditional environment. My first 10 years in dojos were the type of dojo where the teacher insisted you train at that dojo, you don't go anywhere else. The teacher would always bad talk other dojos. Oh, they suck because of this, they suck because of that. Don't go there. Um, and there was that whole idea of like, we're in competition with each other, or what if you went in that dojo, could you beat everybody up? And all very absurd now. But I sort of went from the frying pan into the fire. I went to Japan where uh, many of the martial arts relationships are like, you're like becoming an acolyte, like a Zen acolyte. You're expected to train with that teacher and that teacher only, or if God forbid you should do two martial arts, your main teacher is the one who tells you whether it's okay. And I think there's a lot of pros to that if you have a great teacher. And those pros are they tend to have a very deep knowledge of that martial art. And your focus with them allows you to have a shot at having that same level of deep knowledge as long as you put the work in and the time in. And so I still hold a couple of those values. One is I don't think you should dabble. At least not if, I mean, so taking the democratic point of view, if that's what you want, you should 100% dabble, right? I'm sure God loves dabblers too. But if you want to be really good at something, you got to put a lot of time into it. And if a second martial art either takes that time away or has some structural basis that interferes with your ability to learn the one that you really want to be good at, then you just got to be realistic and say, I got to cut that down or stop that. But in the long run, and obviously I like multiple martial arts because I, on a daily basis almost, do at least 4 of them. In the long run, I think they feed each other. I'll have to say 2/3 of the people I've met in martial arts don't put enough time in, either in one martial art or in just training in general, right? Most people do martial arts for 2, 4, 6 hours a week. 6 hours would be on the high end. And that's great. I love it. I'm so glad they're doing that. If you want to be up here, if you want to be in the apex world of martial arts, you got to put a lot of time in. And that means if you're going to do 3 or 4 martial arts, you got to put a lot of time in. And that's just realistic. How much time do you have between sleeping, eating, working, and training?
I definitely think that you're right about goals. When you do anything, you only have X amount of time and X amount of energy. So what are your goals? Are your goals to become a black belt level? Are your goals competition? Are your goals just, I want to do something new that stimulates my mind that I enjoy? And I think that will really kind of help guide you on your decision to how much time you're going to spend in any one particular art and how many arts you're going to divide your time between. But I know you do multiple arts as well, Bob. Like, what do you find? Do you find that you have a personal struggle between time with the arts, or is it do you have a clear path in your mind of what you're doing and why you're doing it?
I would definitely have a problem if I personally were trying to train in more than 2 arts. I'm astonished at the level of skill that I see in the JMAC seniors that do train in more than 2 arts. For me, that would be too much. And especially at this point where we're essentially implementing new curriculum for both the Iaido and the Jujutsu. So uh, I'm not um, overwhelmed with the 2 that we're doing right now because I make the focus primarily the Iaido and I'm working hard on the Jujutsu. I do find a bit of a drain on trying to accomplish everything that I need to do on the Jujutsu side. So I think it depends on where you're at in your journey. If you are very senior, very experienced, and have a long track record in multiple arts that are those same arts, that would obviously be an easier situation. Our situation's a little different with the changes over the last few years, so it's maybe not the typical experience of most people.
Yeah, as you were speaking, I was thinking about Kent's idea that the purpose of it is so important. Like the purpose really helps define whether it's a good idea and how you should approach it. If someone wants to compete in MMA, that's a really different equation. In this day and age, you 100% have to train in multiple martial arts, right? Usually a striking art, a takedown art, and a groundwork art at minimum, and be pretty darn good at them. There's no holes in the top 25% of the people in UFC or Pride or One. If that's your goal, then not only is it a good idea, but if you don't train in multiple martial arts, you're not going to do very well. So the purpose matters. You know, my outlook is as a lifetime martial artist who's trying to help other people become fitter, become calmer, have a clearer worldview, um, build a tribe around themselves. That's kind of the dojo ethos, right? It's not really the fighter's ethos, even though the stuff we do arises out of fighting.
Well, it's interesting too when you talk about training multiple martial arts, right? If I look back on my history, I I would get into an art and like, when I did Taekwondo for years. I did it from the time I was 7, I was 14. So I did it for 7 years. Then I got into karate and Kobudo, and I did that for a number of years. And then I got into Hapkido and kickboxing, and I did that for a number of years. And then we kind of cycle back to some of that other stuff. So it's not like I think you're going to have a different experience if you're like, I've never done a martial art before, and I'm going to start 4 of them all at once, right? I think that can be a little overwhelming, but at the same time, we go to college or we go to high school and we take 6 different subjects all in one day, so it is possible. We can learn like that, but I think it's easier when you, for me, I can't say easier. My experience was to put a few years in and really get like a lockdown on the way the body moves and the understanding the principles of the particular art, or getting the feel, because every art has its own feel, and then going and looking at something else, because you have enough to maintain of the other art, if that makes sense. So typically when I'm studying a new martial art, like new to me, I jump in with both feet for a number of years, till I feel like I've got a good enough of knowledge to put it on cruise control, and then go pick up something else and not lose too much of what I've been doing from the other. Because I do maintain like my own particular workouts and training sessions to help me keep up on those other arts. Like that's an important thing. So like it's easier for me to keep up on Kali. It's easier for me to keep up on like the Junfan and the Silat and the Panentuken and the Jiu-Jitsu, because I'm teaching them all the time. So like for my personal martial art that I'm working on now is the last few years I've been doing private lessons in Rute, Kobudo, and Karate, and I've been doing private lessons in internal arts, Chinese internal arts. And I don't really teach those to my group. Those are what I'm doing on my own time. And then when I get my some of my training time, when I go in and I teach those other arts. So I think it's easier when you're a martial arts instructor, because then you get more exposure, you get guaranteed exposure on an almost everyday basis, versus if you were just a student, working a 9 to 5 job, and then on top of that trying to pick up 4 to 5 arts in the evening at only 2 days a week. And I'm not saying don't do that, but I say that I think that's a harder formula than like the approach I took over the years. I didn't go into it intending on, like I'm going to do all these different martial arts. It just, I started with this one and I enjoyed it. And I was like, oh, I see this one. I kind of enjoy that. And longevity is the key too, right? Like if you do an art and you only do it for a few months, you're not going to get much out of it. You gotta commit. You gotta put yourself in for a number of years. This is where I think of like when, you hear the JKD quote all the time, absorb what is useful. And I don't know about the useful part, but I'll say what I like about that is the word absorb. So if I think about myself like a sponge, uh, a sponge, you don't just like dab it on a little bit of water. You have to submerge the sponge, right? Put time under that water and let it really soak up and absorb all that water. And then you take it out, you can wring it out, and you have kind of still like, you'll get rid of a lot of that water, but you'll still have the essence of that in that sponge, right? And then you can submerge the sponge in something else. And that's sort of like kind of how I feel about it. I like to submerge myself in something for a long period of time, so that when I wring it out, I've got enough still left inside where I take it with me to the next thing.
That's a cool analogy. I love the idea that the sponge is full of water and then you can immerse it in new water, because some of that will stay with you. I've got a funny expression for this though. How about you, Kent? You're not normal. And what I mean by that is your ability to juggle all those things and reach a high level of competency in a variety of martial arts is exceptional. And when we look at role models like Bruce Lee or Danny Inosanto, um, uh, you can think of the top guys at UFC, John Jones. They're not normal, right? I mean, of
Not
course, if
normal.
you're in the UFC, you're already not normal. But among civilians like us, uh, the ability to get pretty good or really good at a whole bunch of martial arts, that requires time, but it's just not for everybody. And so this is maybe a different topic for a different day, but not everybody's going to do a good job of learning that, multiple martial arts and maintaining them. Part of it is, yeah, you've got some kind of natural talent, ability to preserve the stuff. You've aligned your life to be able to put the time in. And so there are definitely pros and cons to training in multiple martial arts. But for some people, I would say there are more cons if there are people that struggle even to learn one well.
Well, you really hit the nail on the head when you said I align my life. Like that's a big part of it. Is that like I specifically make time to get these different training sessions in. I try to arrange things. I try to arrange my curriculum constantly. I arrange my life around it, and that is something that has to be looked at. But if you look at anybody that's achieved a high level of success in training multiple martial arts, both of you guys included, both of you guys do multiple martial arts, both of you guys are martial arts instructors, both of you guys arrange your life around that ability to be able to do these arts and practice and share. Yeah, and so I think that if you're going to make the endeavor to train multiple arts, maybe one of the cons, and I don't know if it's a con, but one of the requirements is that you're going to have to make some structural arrangements in your life, some scheduling arrangements in your life to say this is what I do. Just like if you say I'm going to make fitness a priority now in my life, you have to structure your life around that, around your workouts, around your eating, around, you know what I'm saying? It can't just be like I'm going to be a healthy guy 2 days a week for an hour, because that's how most people do martial arts, 2 days a week for an hour. And if you say for 60 minutes twice a week, I'm going to be super healthy, you're not going to get the results that you want. I mean, that's realistic.
Yeah, back in a previous organization, when we were focused on Kenjutsu and Aikijutsu, the requirement was that an individual had to have achieved Shodan or the equivalent in one art prior to even starting in a second one. So that was years of training, uh, typically for a person before they were allowed to do two arts. I'm not that strict about it now, but what I do tell people is that give it enough time that you feel comfortable with that initial art, understanding that when you add the second art as a relatively junior student, you're going to compromise your progress in both, that you're going to make a trade-off in how rapidly you're able to advance, because to use your word of absorption, there's a maturation that has to happen that is um, it can't really be rushed. And some people obviously would be quicker than others, but nonetheless, there's a stretch of time for an art to really come down to the level of the bones. But if someone's okay with understanding, they're going to be slower in advancing in both. And I tell them, pick one as your priority. Don't When you add the second art, don't think you're going to be 50-50. Make sure you have a priority that is your main focus, and the other is a supplement. And then you may be more comfortable with the rate of progress that you make overall.
Yeah, it's a fair point. Um, we haven't really gotten into it, and we're down to just a couple of minutes, but uh, it's interesting to consider how the concepts and movements you learn in one martial art can help inform your other ones. I know that I do all my martial arts with a lot of Iaido in them. What I
Mhm.
mean by that is I'm super aware of the position of my body and how I get linear strength across, along the long axis of the bones, and putting myself in positions to direct power that way with the skeleton rather than with muscles. That informs all the martial arts I do, even, whether it's grappling or jujitsu or karate. And most of that comes from Iaido. That's a pro. Um, Although it's quite possible that somebody who's a specialist in one of those arts, right? Somebody who's a Goju-ryu specialist, Goju-ryu 10th dan, looks at my karate and goes, your karate looks funny. It looks like a guy who knows Iaido doing karate or something. And that might be a high compliment, but it's definitely true that there's some degree of leakage across the two in terms of technique and philosophy. We ought to probably kind of go around and wrap it up. So, Sensei Wolfe, final thoughts, and then we'll.
Final thought is training in martial arts is possible. There's real advantages. There are also complications. My opinion is try to find two things that are very complementary and make that the basis of what you're doing. And if you're capable individually of doing more, great. I know my limitations, and I'm very comfortable focusing on Iaido and Jujutsu.
For me, I guess it really comes back to goals. What am I doing this for? Am I doing this because I want to be a 10th dan in Goju-ryu? If that's the case, then I need to like dedicate my life to it. Am I and probably just that, but am I doing this for the sake of enjoyment? Am I doing this for the sake of interest? Am I doing this for the sake of health? Why am I doing this? If I think that once you understand the why, I think it's a lot easier to make the arrangements you need to train at your desired level.
100%. I thank you so much for reminding me that sometimes it's about enjoyment, right? I get a little too heavy sometimes about the traditional look at it. I have a ton of fun at it, but I want to make sure other people realize that that's okay, especially the people that look to me as a martial arts mentor. I tend to have a serious face on more than I'd like. So that's a great reminder. Super good conversation today, everybody. Thank you so much. I'm going to hit the stop record button, but if you're watching this, check out our various dojos. Check out KSK Martial Arts in Lansing, Michigan, Itten Dojo in Mechanicsburg, PA, and of course, the Japanese Martial Arts Center in sunny Ann Arbor, Michigan. Hope you'll join us for the next one.